Hello and welcome to this 21st day of December. Well, hope you're having a wonderful day so far. Well, in Brisbane, where we broadcasting from, it's 29 degrees and sunny. And I must say, beautiful part of the year. Love that weather. Of course, we have to always keep an eye out for the storms, late afternoon storms, which are traditional around this time of the year. Well, today we have so much to get through as well. And Ankita will be joining us a little bit later on with her Daily India Report, which we bring to you yesterday. But just a heads up that from tomorrow we're going into the Christmas holiday mode. So there might be interruptions or some slight changed timings for some of the shows and the programs as they happen until January. We will keep you notified and by the those Facebook posts, etc., as to what timing the shows would be coming on. Well, first of all, let's look at the number of cases. And as was mentioned, that once the borders start opening, we let people loose, the numbers in community will grow. Well, by how much? Let's find out first in New South Wales.
Today's COVID-19 figures for New South Wales have just been released. The state has recorded 3,057 new cases and 2 more deaths. There are 284 people in hospital and 39 in intensive care. This graph shows what happened up until yesterday, with cases continuing to increase to 2,501 cases, but that doesn't include today's figures. Reporter Manaz Anguri joins us now from Sydney. Manaz, take us through today's numbers.
Good morning, Dan. Yes, so another day of record-breaking case numbers, 3,057 new cases. That's the highest we've ever seen. We also recorded 2 deaths overnight. There's currently 39 people in ICU. That's up from yesterday's 33. And there's 284 people in hospital, up from 261 yesterday. Now, our vaccination rates are still stubbornly still. There's currently 94.9% of the eligible population who have had 1 dose and 93.4% who are now fully vaccinated.
Manaz, no more isolation now for international arrivals.
Yeah, so from today, international arrivals coming into New South Wales who are fully vaccinated won't have to isolate for 72 hours. They will have to get tested within 24 hours of their arrival and wait until they get a negative test. And they'll also have to get a follow-up test on day 6. Now, this decision was made because of our high vaccination rates, and the New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet has said that this will make it easier for travellers and it'll also help keep flight crew on the job. Now, the rule for unvaccinated people will still remain the same. So if you come into New South Wales internationally and you are unvaccinated and you're over the age of 18, you will still have to complete 14 days of hotel quarantine. Now, although it's good news that you don't have to isolate for 72 hours, the high testing rates that we've been seeing in the past couple of days does mean that there's been a huge delay in getting your test results back. Yesterday we had 144,000 tests, today we had 136,000 tests, and we've had this rate for a couple of days now, which is extremely high. So it is important to note that although you can skip isolation, it will take some time before you get your results back.
And that is quite true. Getting the results back would be very hard. And I was talking to someone, who just came in from New South Wales here, and the rigmarole they had to go through to get the border pass to come in. So yes, you might go and get tested, but the timing for those results might take a lot. Well, so we've looked at New South Wales with 3,057 cases. What's happening in Victoria? Here's that report on the numbers in Victoria.
Victoria has recorded 1,245 new cases of COVID-19 and sadly 6 more deaths. It comes as Melbourne COVID-19 centres are again under pressure as Victorians race to get tested in the lead up to Christmas. Reporter Oliver Gordon joins me now from Melbourne. Oliver, take us through the latest figures.
Hi Dan, so 1,245 new cases and 6 further deaths. That's slightly down from yesterday where we had 1,302 cases, but we had 0 deaths yesterday. We've got 392 people in hospital at the moment. That's also down from 406 in hospital yesterday, which was the highest hospitalisation rate we'd seen in a month. 73 of those people are in ICU and 43 are on a ventilator. Yesterday's new case numbers come from 68,888 test results, and 92% of Victorians are fully vaccinated. Interestingly, that fully vaccinated term is up for a bit of debate today, with yesterday Catherine Bennett, the Deakin University epidemiologist, saying that the phrase fully vaccinated maybe should be reserved for people who've had all 3 doses of the vaccination here in Victoria.
Oliver, you're at a testing site and it looks very busy behind you. In fact, it reached capacity before it even opened this morning.
That's right, so we've been here at the Albert Park drive-through testing facility. It officially opens at 7 a.m, but at 6:15 it was temporarily shut due to capacity. We watched as staff turned away dozens of people who were coming to get tested because they simply couldn't fit them in. We know those who have been lucky enough to snag a spot in this very long line, which winds back hundreds of metres all the way to where the COVID-19 tests are actually happening, are waiting upwards of 3 hours. We also saw informal lines forming out the front of this testing facility where people were waiting for upwards of an hour. So people at this particular site in Melbourne's inner south waiting up to 4 hours for a test. We know that a lot of people who are coming to get tested are symptomless. They're not showing signs of COVID-19. They're here because they need to get a negative PCR test in order to be able to travel interstate or to protect themselves or their loved ones who might be vulnerable or elderly in the lead up to Christmas. These long testing queues aren't isolated to Victoria. Adelaide, Canberra and Sydney also recording these high testing queues in the lead up to Christmas.
Oliver Gordon reporting from Melbourne.
While talking about the long queues yesterday, if you had seen the queue in front of RBH, we happened to be driving past there and my God, it was a long winding queue. So, with all these border restrictions and cross-border regulations, that has created a horrendous amount of work and a nightmare for so many people out there. Well, could it have been better managed? I believe so. But because each territory and each region and each state decided to do their own thing rather than a big combined national approach, this is what happens. All the new rules, regulations have to be put in place, then they need to be policed, then they need to be managed. So here's a little bit feather on the queues. As you can see, going for miles, as they reckon. Now that is a really, really long queue. Well, with all the queues and all the number of testings, people are also heading to the hospitals. So how are the hospitals coping up? What is the situation there? Let's take a look at this report from Wemby Hospital.
Jackie Henning lives with her family in Point Cook. When she was pregnant with her now 2-year-old, she planned to give birth at the nearby Werribee Hospital.
I got a call, not from the midwives, but from the GP himself to say, listen, Werribee can't take me. They are completely fully booked for September.
Instead, she had her baby in Sunshine, 40 minutes drive away.
I was a bit shocked, as it's the local hospital. I would kind of take it that everyone in this area would go there.
Jackie went into labour at night. Others weren't so lucky.
We've had women who've delivered on the side of the road and ambulances have brought the baby back here because, of traffic.
Doctors say that happens about once a month. In 2019, nearly 5,000 babies were born to families in Wyndham, but the hospital's annual capacity is a bit less than 4,000.
I think it's really disappointing that, we can't serve our local community.
Maternity is not the only part of the hospital struggling to keep up.
We do not meet our community's need in any way.
Dr Ian Skinner is the head of surgery and a Werribee local. He says he has to turn away patients all the time.
That happens every day, every single day. We have to transfer people out because we don't have the capabilities.
This was established as a country hospital, but Werribee's not a country town anymore. More than 50,000 people live here now, and that's set to double by 2040. So the hospital wants about $400 million for the next stage of its redevelopment to expand maternity care, as well as things like more cancer treatments, an MRI scanner and a bigger emergency department.
When you're working in a very, very rapidly growing community, you're always going to be trying to play catch up. And we are. And if we look for the next 6 years going forward to 2026, we know that we're going to increase, the emergency department will increase by about 100%.
So playing catch-up means that it hasn't been planned properly in the first place. If a growth of an area is planned well, infrastructure is put in place at the planning stage, then it doesn't happen that way. But of course, we now met certain times, it is hard to predict the number of people that would probably come into the area. So, that much we have to really say. But of course, the forward-thinking governments would always consider the possibilities of moving ahead and planning ahead, and if you're putting an infrastructure in, taking into account the projected growth. Well, of course, now we have the COVID-19 vaccines. We are double vaxxed. People are going for their boosters now. So are we really fully covered?
Let's get more on the threat that's being posed by the Omicron variant and what will be on the table tomorrow when National Cabinet meets. Sharon Lewin is the director of the Doherty Institute, which produced the official COVID modelling for the federal government and National Cabinet. She joins us now. Thank you so much, Sharon, for taking the time to speak with us today. There is this insistence now by the state premiers to recognise that if you do not have your booster, then you're not fully immunised. Is that something that you are on board with?
Look, these are difficult decisions. Australia's done incredibly well getting so many people their first 2 doses. At the moment, there's a gap of 5 months to get the 3rd dose. We're going to have to make that really easy for people to access. Certainly, you get much better immunity after your 3rd dose, and you need that 3rd dose for better protection against Omicron. And deciding whether that makes you fully vaccinated or not will be a decision for our National Cabinet.
There's also that discussion as to whether the gap between the 2nd dose and the booster shot should be shortened from 5 months to 4 months as well. There's some concern too that those who've had AstraZeneca as their jab, well, their immunity may be waning far earlier. Would you agree that there is a need to shorten that gap between the 2nd dose and the booster shot?
Yeah, to make that decision, the authorities or the advisory group, ATAGI, are weighing up a number of factors. How quickly your antibodies drop, and yes, they do drop. They start lower with AstraZeneca, and therefore they will be lower at 4 months. How much safety data we have at giving the booster earlier, and ability to deliver it. So they're weighing all of these things up. We're certainly learning from overseas that the booster dose gives you that additional protection against Omicron that we want. And so these are difficult decisions being weighed up by all the best evidence available and availability of vaccines. And that may well change. The current recommendation of 5 months may well change in coming days.
All right, so let's just say that gap is shortened. We shorten it from 5 months to 4 months. That would mean that a lot more Australians would need that booster shot quite soon, in fact, immediately. How confident are you that we've actually got the supply?
I understand that there is no problem with supply. The challenge will be about rolling out and getting that into people's arms. I should just say that booster doses are one approach for Omicron. There are other things in the toolbox that we can do now to prevent that massive uptick in cases that we're seeing in many other parts of the world, and that includes simple public health measures.
Speaking of simple public health measures, you are a proponent of mask wearing, particularly indoors at this time when the Omicron cases are rising. Now, the New South Wales Premier has said that his state government would recommend that be done for people to wear masks indoors. They're recommending it, but he says that it is down to personal responsibility. Do you think that after 2 years of a pandemic that we are responsible enough to know what to do and not have it mandated?
Look, in an ideal world, of course, we trust that people will do the right thing. However, rules are changing constantly. People are confused and they want to know what they can and can't do. All along in this pandemic, we have had most of our policies informed by the best science and very clear instructions of what you can and can't do. We're in a position at the moment where days really matter, so having the right policy right now, making it really clear to people what you can and can't do, is something I strongly support. And that includes a simple intervention like mask wearing, which really we've become very used to. I know it's not the way we like to live, but we have become very used to it. And I think we need our leaders to tell us where we can't wear those masks, because my decision to not wearing a mask doesn't just affect me, it affects everyone around me. And while we have borders open internally with Australia, it affects everyone across Australia. So we really need some cohesion and simple advice to stop any confusion for people of what they can and can't do.
All right, Sharon Lewin, the director of the Doherty Institute, thank you.
Thanks very much.
And thank you, Sharon, for that report, because it is very, very to see that report. Well, right now, as we know, people have started traveling. So what's happening in that scene? How are people coping up, or are they throwing up tantrums?